560 The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. If you're looking for the latest news, insight into what it means, and the sharpest opinion, there's only one station in Chicago where you can turn, and it's this one. We're AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Sort of saw this coming from our conversation with election attorney Cleta Mitchell last week. President Trump pardoned 77 American citizens targeted by Dem Socialist attorneys general for their participation in alternative elector efforts and challenges to the 2020 presidential election results and the vulnerabilities alleged. On Friday, the Trump administration began contacting scores of Republicans still facing criminal charges in a handful of blue states for their service as alternative electors or connection to the alternative electors that conveyed the president's decision to pardon them. The official pardon provides that, quote, the president grants a full, complete, and unconditional pardon for all conduct relating to the advice, creation, organization, execution, submission, support, voting, activities, participation in, or advocacy for of any slate or proposed slate of presidential electors, whether or not recognized by any state or state official in connection with the 2020 election. And the Office of U.S. Pardon Attorney Ed Martin provided a 15-page memorandum that was obtained by the Federalist that essentially goes through the case for issuing these pardons. Really important because you still have people that were otherwise facing criminal prosecution or jail time. The action taken by the president obviously heads that off at the pass. For more on this, we're pleased to be joined again for some legal insights by Professor William Jacobson. Professor Jacobson is the clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell. He's the founder of LegalInsurrection.com and president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation, as well as the Equal Protection Project. Professor Jacobson, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me back.
In your view, is this a judicious use of the president's pardon power?
Yeah, I'm not sure there is such a thing as judicious use of
okay.
power. It's unlimited and unfettered, pretty much. And I think this is probably, Trump doesn't want his people hanging out there once he leaves office. And so I think, as of now, some have been prosecuted under state law. Trump can't pardon that. But there haven't been, to my knowledge, federal prosecutions of any of these people. And I think he doesn't want that to happen if there is a Democrat in the next administration. So I think this is him just putting his affairs in order, so to speak. There are no current prosecutions. There's not going to be any while he's in office. But the statute of limitations on these alleged crimes, I think, carries over a year or so into a new administration. So I think this is just him trying to put this behind him.
Well, I mean, okay, that makes sense to me. But then let's talk about the alternative electors deal in the first place. I mean, the prosecutions, even the state level prosecutions that are ongoing. I mean, do you find those meritorious, or is this another example of lawfare?
I think it's mostly lawfare. There's been this myth created. You hear all the time in the media, so-and-so tried to overturn an election. Well, there's nothing in and of itself illegal about trying to overturn an election. People do it all the time.
Right.
Court challenges, they do it through votes in Congress. There's nothing illegal about that. Now, you can do it in an illegal way. And the only prosecutions that I think have any, straight-faced validity is if somebody forged a document, okay? And I think there might be a couple of ones where a document was presented purporting to be something it wasn't. That might be a crime. But the mere fact that you come up with a slate of proposed alternative electors is not illegal. And because you can present that to Congress, and Congress has the right to accept the electors it accepts. So this whole thing about overturning an election, which was the basis for for the prosecution of Trump when he was prosecuted in D.C. in federal court by Jack Smith, all you heard in the media is Trump's, tried to overturn an election. Well, so what? That's not illegal. And so that's been my view all along. It's my view of these alternative elector cases. Unless somebody forged a signature or somebody committed fraud by presenting a certificate as something it's not, I don't think any of that was criminal.
No, right. I mean, yeah, right. Of course, it's presented that way, as you well know, but just to be explicit about it, he tried to overturn an election. The connotation is some sort of coup d'etat. The connotation is illicitly. And of course, this is why we have courts of law. And this is why we have a free society where you're allowed to make arguments, even if they're arguments that a judge or people don't find persuasive. You're still allowed to make them. So you're allowed to come up with novel legal theories about, about why this was or was not proper in terms of the administration of a particular election in a particular jurisdiction. I mean, I feel silly saying something so obvious, but it seems to evade the comprehension of, half the country.
Yeah, I mean, think of all the Democrat challenges to elections that they lost, okay? And so that's the whole thing, and I think Trump is right to be concerned that a new administration will be vindictive, even more vindictive than towards Republicans than the prior administration. And I think that's an issue he's concerned about.
The BBC, I was just commenting on it before you joined us. So obviously over the weekend you saw the top executives at BBC resign in shame. I don't know if they're ashamed. They should be ashamed. But certainly they were caught by an internal investigation doctoring Trump's J6 video, and there's other allegations of institutional bias in their coverage of other topics like the war in Gaza and trans issues and so forth. No surprises there. But Trump has suggested that he may be interested in filing, a $1 billion lawsuit against the BBC for defamation. I mean, it seemed to work against CBS and ABC, so I guess why not get some of that British taxpayer money to line his pockets too and punish the BBC some more? What do you make of a possible defamation case in this instance?
Well, what they did, and listeners may have heard it already, but they basically sliced and diced an interview to make it seem like he was encouraging violence on J6, and left out all the parts where he wasn't. Okay, and so it was bad, and I think that he probably has a legitimate claim. Interesting jurisdictionally to me, I think he's threatening to sue in Florida. BBC's based in Britain, so I don't know those sort of things, but. Yeah, I think the BBC messed up here. They deliberately tried to present him in a false light, which is a slightly different claim than defamation. And I think that the BBC is so corrupt, it's kind of the epitome of corruption in mainstream media, whether it's Gaza. They have some big scandal going there now where there was a reported mass grave that they knew the claims were false, and they reported them anyway. So it's just totally corrupt. But that's what happens when you get government-run media, and it's unfortunate because, the internet is, awash in fabrications, awash in propaganda, and who do you rely on? And when you get a group, an entity like the BBC, flat out manipulating a video where there is actual proof of what was on the original video, where you get that, people lose faith in any sort of media, legitimacy.
Well, yeah, I mean, but they've delegitimized themselves, and so you shouldn't trust the BBC, and you should trust people that are pointing it out. I mean, that's sort of, you basically make decisions based on work product. That's how it should work. Yeah. I want to get your view on something else too, because this is all of a sudden the talk of leftist circles. Eric Holder talked about it over the weekend on a leftist podcast, and Serpent Head James Carville talking about it with his old buddy Al Hunt, and I do mean old. Same thing. Take a listen to James Carville telling us what's going to happen when Dem Socialists regain regain the two branches of government in 2028, so that they can regain control of the third branch.
I want to talk to Chief Justice Roberts, Justice Alito, Justice Barrett, Justice Kavanaugh, Justice Gorsuch, I might be forgetting one. I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. A Democrat is going to be elected in 2028. You know that. I know that. There's going to be a Democratic House. There's going to be a Democratic Senate. The Democratic president is going to announce a special transition advisory committee on the reform of the Supreme Court, that we could have our third branch of government has lost the faith and trust of the American people, and his president would are going to do everything along. He's going to appoint a blue ribbon, maybe Judge Ludick and the dean of the, just the usual suspects, all right? And they're going to recommend that the number of Supreme Court justices go from 9 to 13. That's going to happen, people. That's going to happen to you. They're going to win. They're going to do some blue ribbon panel of distinguished jurists, and they are going to recommend 13, and a Democratic Senate and House is going to pass it, and the Democratic president is going to sign it, because they have to do an intervention so we can have a Supreme Court that the American people trust again.
Professor Jacobson, you want me to put in a word for you on the blue ribbon panel that Jim Carville's going to be in charge of assembling?
Yeah, I'd love to be on that panel.
So the Supreme Court expansion, that's seems to be top of mind for Dems right now. I mean, I know it pops up and then it recedes and it pops up again, but it's popped up.
Yeah, I think it's very high on their list. I mean, what is holding them back from absolute power in the country? Obviously not controlling the presidency, but that can change. And I agree with him. If I looked at the landscape right now, I think it's a toss of the coin as to what party the next president's going to be from. At best, a toss of the coin. But what's been holding them back is the Supreme Court. They are absolutely furious that the Supreme Court has essentially restrained their desire for absolute power. And they want that impediment removed. And really the only way they can do it is through expanding the court. It's been on their agenda for multiple election cycles. They brag about it. It motivates their base. And it's not going to be as easy as it seems. I'm not sure they will get enough Democrats to go along with it. Certainly not. They're going to have to nuke the filibuster if that's what they're going to do, because you're never going to get enough senators. They're never going to get 60 senators. Okay, there's just no way that's going to happen. And it's not as clear. It's much less likely that they will regain control of the Senate. I'm not saying it's impossible, but looking at the numbers, they're probably going to regain control of the House. The Senate, Republicans still have a multiple-seat lead and might pick up one or two this year. So I think the chance of them getting 60 senators or even 51 might be not as hopeful as Carville is saying. And they'll need to pass a bill through both houses.
You're right, and for those, including President Trump recently, who suggest preemptive action on nuking the filibuster because you know what the left is going to do if they get the numbers. Even nuking the filibuster now, even if you did it, you can't preempt what they would do. In other words, there's no way to ostensibly there would be no way to sort of memorialize it shall be 9 Supreme Court justices to prevent a Congress that is controlled by Democrats from unwinding it. So, I mean, the point of that filibuster standard and trying to hew to it is to make sure you're not just swinging from 13 to 9 to 13 to 9, depending on who's in power, just using this issue as the example.
Yeah, that's right. And, this might be a mistake, though, politically for Democrats, because while it will motivate some of their voters, it motivates conservatives and Republicans also. I think if there is a legitimate threat, Supreme Court nominations and supreme control of the Supreme Court is extremely important to Republican voters. So they may end up increasing Republican turnout if they try to push that through. So I'm not so sure that it's, as an electoral matter, going to help them as much as they think, even though it will motivate their base.
Professor William Jacobson, a clinical professor of law and director of the Securities Law Clinic at Cornell, founder of LegalInsurrection.com, and president of the Legal Insurrection Foundation, as well as the Equal Protection Project. Professor Jacobson, thank you as always.
Great, thank you.
And Professor Jacobson joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
Before you see it on TV, share it on Facebook, or read about it in the paper. Hear it here first. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Your local State Farm agent, Anthony DeGrotto, combines good neighbor service with surprisingly great rates. You can combine your home, auto, and life insurance